This is John Patterson with 6378 Building Capacity for Teaching and Learning. Interview with Principal Lance Alexander. All right, Mr. Alexander, 5 questions for you today. We're going to talk about the campus improvement plan today. Can you talk a little bit and elaborate on the process of obtaining consensus for your CIP and specifically getting teacher buy-in with the vision and focus of where we're going with the campus?
Okay, so when the school year is over, we have a retreat, and that's the administrator retreat. We usually invite team leaders, department chairs, and key teachers along with counselors and administrators. We go over to the Klein Multipurpose Center. We take all data from the previous year and we start working on the CIP, so everybody has a say in it. It's not something that I do with the Associate of Curriculum and Instruction and we just say, okay, here's our CIP. No, it's a total buy-in, and what we'll do is we'll do heat maps and heat charts and look at pros and cons of doing this or doing that. But it's a tedious process. Last year it took us 2 days just to get a general outline of how we were going to build our CIP. And once we obtained that outline, then administrators over the summer refined it to make sure that we were making sure that student needs were being met and that the CIP was equitable along with the Klein Forest family of schools.
Gotcha. So can you talk about a little bit, when you come in the fall, one of the things we've talked about in our course thus far is becoming a principal and coming in with your CIP. How do you portray that vision to the staff, and then how do you sell it to them? I know that can be an issue.
And we do that. It's not good with the school of 4,000 kids and over 300 teachers to do that in one big mass teacher.
That's kind of what we discussed
faculty,
in our class.
Yeah, it's better if it's done in smaller groups, more intimate settings.
Okay.
So we have what we call PLC Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
You're very familiar with PLC Thursdays. You can explain to them what a PLC Thursday looks like, but that's where every teacher filters through there in small intimate settings. We're able to go through the CIP, talk about the CIP, let them know what everything is, and then they get their plan on the page, which is just a basic summary of the overall CIP, and then they can ask questions and find out what their role in it is and what their specific content area, how it might play a part into the total CIP.
Gotcha. So would you say that the fact that we have common PLC periods significantly enhances our ability to get our CIP across, as in comparison to maybe some campuses who don't have that common PLC period?
Well, I think not only to get the CIP across, but I mean, you're talking about communication. It's so much easier, you're in your U.S. history PLC, it's so much easier for us to go articulate what's going on in the building at certain points, or we need this, we need that, EOC testing. It's just so much easier to talk to a group of teachers that have a common content that they're teaching and broadcast information. We can make it content specific. Gotcha, that way. And then like we can walk into your PLC and say, okay, U.S. history, this is what areas you guys really need to look at. This is where we need your help on improving.
Gotcha. Okay, a little bit on top of that again. Let's say that you have a PLC that is resistant to that change. What is kind of some basic steps that you would take as an administrator to help that PLC maybe adopt and move along?
Well, I mean, you're going to have teachers that operate in fixed mindset within every group. And the whole thing is communication, follow through, and feedback. It's us working with that teacher, getting them to see the big picture, getting them to understand why this is important, and then just making sure that they're not staying in that fixed mindset, that they're able to grow. And it goes back to our guiding documents. The whole promise to purpose thing with Klein is, it's we, not me. It's not about you individually, it's about we. We being the content area you're in or the department you're in, and how that we fits into the big picture of we.
Good. Cool. All right. Okay, next question is, what are our current learning goals in our CIP?
Current learning goals is that every student grows by 1 year. And then, I mean, I don't have it pulled up right now. There's all sorts of different learning goals embedded when it deals with ELLs, when it deals with our SPEDs, and just being specific about certain subgroups.
Mm-hmm. I know specifically algebra and English 1 are specific focus areas in our learning goals. Can you kind of elaborate on why and kind of what steps we're taking?
Okay, I'm going to talk about ELA 1 and ELA 2 first. ELA 1 and ELA 2, we were very low performing this year. We don't think it's an ELA problem. We think it's an ELL problem, and we're putting specific measures in place to make sure that we're hitting those kids and allowing them to grow. Because of that, we double blocked ELA 1, where they go to ELA 1 90 minutes a day, and they don't have an intervention period in 9th grade. But they do have 90 minutes of ELA 1, trying to build solid fundamental skills and, inference skills, comprehension skills, just fluency skills, just making sure that they're developing the fundamentals of a true English student. ELA 2, we've put those guys in specific interventions where we're also trying to skill development type. We have LLI kids. Administrators are even doing reading activities with those kids during the intervention periods to try to grow them. And then algebra, same thing. Algebra is probably shown the biggest increase as far as the data goes this year.
Wow, good.
And that's because we were able to hire master teachers that teach 2 classes a day, and then they're able to work with teachers on coaching them on what high quality teaching looks like, to better articulate to the kids what's going on, and to help the teacher give them support as they're working with those kids.
Gotcha. So you've already seen growth in algebra this year.
Seen a lot of growth in algebra. We've seen growth in English 1 and English 2, but
Good.
at the same token, I think we entered this year with 186 more ELL kids than we had at this time last year.
Oh wow.
So I mean, it's not that those kids can't learn. It's not that those kids are that low. It's just English. The English language is new to them, and so getting them to adapt to what we have here it's a transition.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, absolutely. All right. Third question: how do you handle change within the CIP? What have you changed, and how do you kind of cope with those?
Oh, I got a good story on that. So, like I told you last time, we have what we call the Klein Forest Families of School, KFFS, and our CIP is aligned with theirs. In the CIP, it's very important through visible learning that the elementaries participate in what's called linking walks.
Mhm.
And this is part of John Hattie's visible learning stuff. And what it is you take a group of teachers, and this is just the big picture of it. You take a group of teachers, you have data forms, and you went through this process. You go in and you meet with the kids and find out what their terminology is and how they're using that visible learning terminology and how it's helping them learn. It's nothing about the teacher. This is not a summative evaluation on the teacher. This is more collecting data on what the students are learning. Okay, so when we wrote the CIP last summer, we were supposed to do that with 287 teachers across the board.
Mm-hmm.
In October, I realized that we haven't started the linking walks. We had talked about it. We've gone and visited with people about it, but it was going to be way too big for us to tackle. So I got with our executive director in teaching and learning and said, hey, this is way too big for a high school to throw out all at once. An elementary school that only has 86 teachers, it's easy to roll right out. A high school that has over 300 teachers, you've got to chunk it up.
Mm-hmm.
So we chose the social studies department, your department, because it's one of our higher performing departments, and figured that's going to be our pilot point with the linking walks. So I did make a change, submitted the change to our deputy superintendent and let her know why, and they were in complete agreement with that.
Cool. So you did a mid-year change.
So we did a mid-year change.
So what is the in a nutshell? What is the purpose and outcome of the linking walks?
The purpose and the outcomes of linking walks is to ensure that those kids are receiving the terminology from Hattie's visible learning characteristics.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just to make sure that we are growing our own and that the kids, and what we would like to see with the linking walks, this is a huge vertical alignment piece with us because we're using the same fundamental tools they're learning in kindergarten in our 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th grade classes. So that allows us to have more consistencies with the kids. They know how they're being taught. They know what they're looking for. They know the terminology that we're using. It's going to allow them to grow. It's just like coaching football.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got an 8th grade team that's running a completely different offense than what your high school is running, terminology is completely different, then you're going to have a learning curve when those kids come from 8th grade to 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So just keeping it consistent from one school to the next, one grade level to the next is big for us.
Gotcha. And the key aspect is the people at the top have the opportunity, and even the people at the bottom have the opportunity to go and see what each other is doing in their classrooms.
It's all about vertical alignment.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right. Next question is, How do you start the school year with a focus on learning, and specifically, what drives your focus in the beginning, and what does it typically look like?
We don't start the year focused on learning. The very first thing you do when you start the year should be relationship driven. Told you guys to take the first 7 to 10 days, get to know your kids, get to know their why, get to make positive phone calls home before you have to make the negative, do your research on the ones you think you might have issues with, find out what's worked, what hasn't worked with them.
Mm-hmm.
When we hit the student focus part, we look at data. We're very fortunate that we have that situation room to where we can put each kid up on a popsicle stick up on a wall and get to know them by strength, need, and everything else. And that way we can figure out what we need to do. We can group those kids accordingly, according to what their deficits are.
Gotcha. So making commitment to building those relationships is really kind of the foundation to our instructional learning.
Well, if you look at our guiding documents, which is talks about a profile of a learner, relationship driven is what you start with.
Mm-hmm.
Student focused is the key component in everything, but you can't reach that kid unless you get to know that kid. So that's kind of the priority we
Good.
got.
Okay. And last question. How do you determine the priorities for the school year? And and obviously those are going to develop as you go. But how has the priorities changed this year, and what's most important for you, and how do you develop those priorities?
Well, I mean, at a high school this size, you walk into the school year, we want to improve student performance. We want
Mm-hmm.
to have improvement. We want our state accountability to match where we think we're at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's priority, is putting systems in place to make sure all kids are learning and all kids have the opportunity to learn. And it also goes along with our district vision. Every kid enters with a promise and exits with a purpose. So that's how we start the alignment with everything. What happens after that is according to what is happening with the data.
Mm-hmm.
We use the data to drive everything we do instructionally to make sure that we're meeting every kid's need and that no one's getting left behind. But priorities change, especially as a principal. I have 17 administrators that work under me. So I don't have my hand in everything,
Yeah.
but I have people like Carrie Farmer, the curriculum instruction associate. She's knee deep within the CIP to make sure that we are doing the small fundamental things to achieve the bigger goals that
Gotcha.
we have within the CIP.
Yeah, and that's kind of leading to my next question: is how do you delegate all of those priorities, and like specifically this year, what priorities did you deem most important, and who did you delegate them to, and what were your
Well,
instructions?
anything involved with curriculum and instruction is
Mhm.
Carrie Farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Anything involved with student performance or interventions or student data goes through Susan Murphy, and then Pam Bro and Greg Coleman, the academic RTI specialist
Mhm.
and the behavior specialist, work with Susan to make sure that we've got interventions set for kids, not only if they're not learning, but what are we doing if they are learning? We've only talked about kids, the failure part of it, but also growing kids and getting them college ready, the CCMR part of our accountability system, making sure that they're versed in Khan Academy, that they're practicing their SAT, ACT skills, that they're
Mhm.
filling out their college applications. They have all these extension type activities to grow them is big also.
Mhm.
And that's a huge part of our RTI spectrum. It's not talked about near as much as the reteach, retest portion of it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Good. Are there any other priorities that you would like to share at this time?
Keeping people like you out of my office at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but we'll talk
I know.
about that later. No, priorities are every kid has a chance at life.
Gotcha.
And these teachers enjoy what they do, and that this is a place that they necessarily don't go to work, but they feel like they're going to school with the kids. And
Gotcha.
trying to create that environment. And I think the more positive vibes you have within your building, the more people are going to go over and beyond to ensure that that they're here for the kids.
Gotcha. Okay, and then last question, I promise. How do you? I know at a place like Klein Forest, student equity is a key aspect of our culture here, and in a part of any school. How do you try to change teachers' mindsets in terms of student equity and minimalizing that normalcy of failure?
And that's another thing that I need to give kudos to our district for. We are being piloted through the Holdsworth Group, which is Charles Butts, the CEO of HEB, donated $100 million to this company called the Holdsworth Group. We are a pilot company for them, and we have created all these guiding documents that have allowed us to get in depth with that same type of question you're asking when it deals with equity. And, I'm actually doing a book study right now. It's called Excellence Through Equity, and I had the privilege to go see Dr. Pedro Noguero, the author of the book, speak last Tuesday. And, teachers don't get into education to make a lot of money. They get in to make a difference, and sometimes they need to be reminded why they got into it. You have teachers who've been teaching 20 years ago that will give you the statement, well, 10 years ago, this was easy. Well, it's not 10 years ago. We're in a different, we have a different group of kids coming up now, and just getting them to be flexible, understanding that, like you talked about earlier, failing forward is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Everybody's going to fail, but embracing that failing forward and, going off we, not me, and taking that growth mindset approach. We've done a lot of book studies with, different types of articles that have embellished the innovator's mindset and all that.
Do you think that equity might end up on the on your CIP before it's all said and done? With a focus on student equity?
It will. It just has to be put in there the right way. And, Klein Forest is a place that is a true example of what Houston looks like with all the diversity and everything we have. If you broke it down with our kids right now and did equity balance with the other schools, we should probably receive more services because of our demographics and the equity. And I think the district is starting to realize that. I think that is prevalent within their vision and within their guiding documents. And it's something that's going to become more prevalent as we move on.
Good, thank you. All right, well, that wraps it up. That's with Principal Lance Alexander. Really appreciate your time.
All right.